I was watching a streamer a couple days ago and was absolutely surprised at how good the most recent Ghost Recon game appeared to be. The amount of negative press the game has received inside the YouTube gaming community is the most I've seen this year aside from Fallout and Anthem. This really got me wondering why this was, and I asked the streamer why he thought there was so much negative press surrounding the game. He replied something to the effect of some people are really bothered by microtransactions. Later in the week, I was talking with my younger brother, who's not so young anymore, about microtransactions specifically, and he seemed to be of the opinion that microtransactions, as long as they are aesthetic, are not that big of a deal. But is this really the case? This is my thoughts surrounding the use of microtransactions in full-price games, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well. Microtransactions used to have a completely different name. They used to be called expansions or DLC. Around the time of Mass Effect Andromeda, controversy surrounding microtransactions began to grow. The argument made at the time by people in the gaming community, namely one that I can think of the most, the cynical Brit, may he rest in peace, was everything that has been made for the game that is included on the disc at time of release should be available to the player. This is where we get into the gray area of microtransactions. I agree with the sentiment that everything on the disc at launch should be available to the person that purchased the game at full price. There are simply too many examples of video games that are free to play that are destroying the market and earnings on a completely free to play model. Additionally, there are other games that continue with the appropriate transactional model of producing a game and then producing additional content after release to sell on top of the already created work. I'm going to reference them multiple times during the course of this conversation, but CD Projekt Red sticks out as a glowing example of how this transactional relationship should be happening. Many people in the industry will point out that the development costs that CD Projekt Red has incurred making these games, since they are located in Poland, are lower than that are incurred by AAA developers here in North America. So let's just dissect this argument for one moment. The argument is that because my costs are higher, I need to have some type of predatory opportunity to generate revenue in our relationship. I'm not saying that all microtransactions are inevitably predatory, but when left to the devices of publishers, microtransactions will inevitably become predatory in almost any given environment unless consumers hold them to some form of boundary with them. A comparison would be a Mexican car company makes an amazing car. They sell the car in the United States for a price that allows them to make a profit, keeping their company going and paying all their employees. An American car manufacturer comes along and makes a similar car, and they charge the same price for that car. But the American manufacturer has higher production costs, and because of this, they decide they're going to run advertisements in the car every hour that the car is on for 10 minutes. But they don't tell you that they're going to do this until 6 months after they've sold all the cars. These advertisements will allow them to recapture all the money that they couldn't make with the initial sale of the vehicle. Now, this would never happen because the American car manufacturer would simply sell the car at an initial price that would allow them to be financially viable. What's worse is if we found out after the sale of these cars and the advertisements that the American car company was making obscene profits off of selling the vehicle, and the Mexican car company, which manufactured a superior car, was making a healthy and respectable profit off of their product. When people make the argument that microtransactions in games are completely acceptable because the production costs rise in America, this is the argument that they're making. They're making an argument that because costs are higher, the video game companies in North America cannot compete with everyone else. Hence, they should be allowed this advantage. The second argument that I hear is that it's cosmetic only. Now, no company that uses microtransactions has ever been able to limit themselves to cosmetic only microtransactions. Even if they begin with cosmetic only microtransactions, inevitably they develop into pay-to-win scenarios or hiding content behind a paywall. Placing the publisher aside for the moment, I feel that the argument has a little more credence. I still adhere to my belief that anything that is placed onto the disc of a game and sold at launch should be the sole property of the person that has purchased it, and nothing that is on that disc should be something that they have to pay in addition for. I should clarify when I mean disc, I mean whatever is ready and in the game at time of launch should be accessible to the player that is paid full retail price for the game. Now, after initial release, if a game studio wants to create gun skins, armor sets, mounts, and all other types of cosmetic microtransactions that don't change the base of the game, I'm fine with this. If they want to add maps, if they want to add content, if they want to add quests, I'm fine with this. This is just another form of DLC. The game designers are simply using the existing environment that they've created to create additional content at a lower cost for the player at a price. I feel this is completely fair. I remember when people became upset about the horse pack mounts in Oblivion. Ultimately, aside from displaying their greed, Bethesda did nothing wrong. They released a fully created game and at a later time created additional content that they sold to people that were playing the game. The price of the DLC is not the point. The people that fixate on this are wrong. They want to say that it's not fair to release individual pieces of content when they should release full expansions, And that's up to the game developer and publisher to sort out for themselves. Not every company has to go the route of CD Projekt Red. If companies like Bethesda want to piecemeal out content after launch, they can. I didn't buy the horse armor then, and I wouldn't buy the horse armor now. Frankly speaking, I've never purchased a microtransaction. It's not in my nature to be hoodwinked by some company into spending money in a manner which is reckless, irresponsible, or disadvantageous to one side exclusively in the exchange of goods/funds. Some gamers may feel that these microtransactions are of value, and I think it's obvious that there are value to them to some gamers. If they weren't of value, no one would purchase them, and I would be writing something entirely different on this cold Minnesota morning. The third issue I have with microtransactions are loot boxes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, as I feel like governments are already getting ahead of the situation and that this practice is going to be regulated out of existence. Playing a video game is not gambling, and it needs to stop. Fortunately, it's not something that affects me because I'm not the type of person that is susceptible to gambling. I have never gambled, and it's something that has absolutely zero allure to me. If for some reason microtransactions actually seemed appealing to me, I would think that it would have to be on the merit of I'd like a game, and I want a specific item, and I'm willing to pay for the specific item while I play the game. Randomized packs of boxes that have different odds of getting higher items is not something that interests me in the slightest, and I think inevitably it will be made illegal. In closing, video game publishers and creators would not be putting these things into games if they didn't sell. I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. Microtransactions have always existed in one form or another for publishers and game creators to try to capitalize fully on the investment that they've made in developing a game. If you look at the first Fable game, Lionhead Studios created an expansion for that game and sold it for $20. That was a microtransaction. The development cycle cost of that piece of game was significantly lower than the initial development cost of the original game. They could have sold that expansion for $5 and still made money, but $20 was a fair price, and gamers need to stop fixating on all or nothing scenarios and accept microtransactions have always existed, they will always exist, and the new format, while it may be something we're not used to, isn't inherently bad. I would hate to see the community rob itself of perfectly excellent games simply because they have a sticking point of zero tolerance for microtransactions that ultimately don't affect them or myself. Let me know your thoughts on microtransactions. As always, I appreciate you stopping by. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And as always, I will see you next time.